What's going on, FE Nation? Happy Wednesday. Happy Thursday. What day is it, Matt?
It's
Thursday?
Thursday. It's
It's
Thursday.
Thursday. It's a new day every day, and it's the day before Friday, the day after Wednesday, and this is the newest edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am your host today, James Grande, joined by Matt Selz, Colby Conway on another vacation. I don't know how his job keeps approving these vacations, Matt. But the guy has more vacations than anyone I've ever met. But Matt, you, on the other hand, always head to the grindstone. What is the phrase there?
Nose
Head to
to
the
nose,
nose to the
nose to the
grindstone.
grindstone. Yes.
Nose to the grindstone. Always in your chair. Same. My butt at this point is glued to my computer chair. The hour at lunch spent at my desk. I have a toilet next to. I'm just kidding. Matt, what's going on, dude? How are you? Happy Thursday. What's going on?
I'm good. I'm good. We're constantly monitoring the flow of injuries that are happening here for MLB, of which there are a boatload. And some of them are coming out of the blue. Like dudes looked fine, and then 3 days later they're shelved. So we've got that. By the way, if you all checked out my prospect report that came out on Fantasy Alarm on Wednesday, I talked about Taj Bradley. Had a pretty good showing Wednesday. He'll be back up, I'm sure of it. Almost included Nolan Jones as an up-and-coming prospect, but didn't see a clear path to playing time. The Rockies called him up. Still don't think he's got a clear path to playing time. Also, I don't think he's going to hit that well. So we'll talk about a few more guys. But yeah, so I've been busy with the prospects and the injuries and all that good stuff. Happy baseball season. 2 weeks in, and we've already got disheveled lineups.
Disheveled lineups is correct, and you were just, you led there with the injuries, so let's hop right into it. Literally, as we were hitting record, and as you and I were doing our little preamble before the show, I get a notification on Twitter that Jeffrey Springs, Ray's fourth ace, because apparently they're just every pitcher is an ace in their own regard, and maybe their best overall pitcher doesn't even pitch for them anymore. Like it's always hurt. Tyler Glass now. Neither here nor there. Jeffrey Springs, who was at 5 strikeouts through 3 innings today, threw I think a warm-up pitch, and if it wasn't a warm-up pitch, it was a pitch in the 4th inning, and immediately looked towards his forearm. It was an 0-2. He threw the second pitch to Justin Turner, and he immediately felt something. The video looks like he's looking towards his forearm. There's some Twitter doctors out there saying that it's a hand or a wrist, but again, Twitter doctors, right? Like there's nothing official. If it is
out of the game, so
he had literally just come out of the game. If it is, let's just play hypothetical here. Worst case scenario is if it's a forearm or an elbow, right?
Worst case scenario is Tommy John.
Yes. When you start looking,
but I don't think it's Tommy John.
It doesn't look like it could be anything. No. We just found out, but it is worth monitoring. It's a fluid situation that we don't know much of. He could make his next start 5 days from now, for all that we know. But It is worth monitoring. He has been dominant. I know he has been on top of the prop world, Matt. He has been top of the seasonal fantasy baseball world with his strikeout upside. I was unsure why Jeffrey Springs wasn't going higher in many drafts this year, considering his strikeout equity last year. But again, looks like a situation we're just going to have to find more about.
Correct.
And that's really all we can say about it as of now. So let's shift our attention to another injury, one that really hurt. And this is the Rangers star shortstop, Corey Seager, who had just started raking in the first 2 games of that Kansas City series. And everything suggested Corey Seager was just getting unlucky. His expected batting average was like 40 points lower. His expected slug was like 50 points lower than it was. Then he homers. Then the next day, he's 2 for 2 with a walk. And then the injury comes. It is officially listed as a grade 2 hamstring strain. Matt, what's your worry level on Corey Seager if you're a fantasy owner right now?
So the timeline for it is about a month, according to normally what that diagnosis comes with, again, a grade 2 hamstring strain. So my immediate concern is it's a soft tissue injury, and those tend to linger, especially for middle infielders who are going left and right and, got to cover basically the most amount of ground in the infield. Not that Seager really stole a lot of bags, but this would definitely hamper, excuse the pun with hamstring, his his tendency to run when he does come back. Now, is it likely a month? Yeah, probably. I don't see any reason why it would be longer than that unless he's slower to heal or whatnot. But what you don't want is you don't want the Rangers getting ahead of themselves and putting him back in a little sooner than they should. Now, I don't think they will because they owe the dude a lot of money, so they want him on the field to be
Right.
winning the money rather than in the dugout. But the other problem is it's shortstop, and as deep as we were all talking about how shortstop was at the beginning of the year, 2 weeks into the season, it's pretty dry. Like there's a
Yes.
lot of iffiness in the shortstop position at this point, especially with another guy we're about to talk about in the injuries too. So for fantasy, you're gonna have to grin and bear it. You're not dropping the guy. It's a month, right? He'll be back at the end
Yep.
of May at the latest. So you just got to grin and bear it, and no, you're not going to replace his production on the waiver wire. I did see Josh H. Smith was playing shortstop, and I think hitting second the other night.
Hitting second on Wednesday. Yep.
So that's a little unfortunate, but it's also unfortunate for Marcus Simeon, who
Correct.
now loses protection in the lineup, and so there's a little bit less run production coming from Simeon, who may try to push, and then the average is going to fall because that's what happens when dudes push.
So no interest in Josh H. Smith.
No, I mean you got to be real desperate to go to go get yourself. I mean, there's some guys still on the waiver wire that we're going to talk about too coming up in the ad drop
Ooh,
segment.
good tease right there, Matt. Good tease.
Who could qualify? So you could look at some of those guys more than Josh Smith, who I don't think he's going to stick it hitting second for very long.
No, that was going to actually be my point. I think they probably, because you also think the Rangers also lost Mitch Garver recently too. So two of their top 6 hitters are now on the injured list. I can see a scenario where Adolis is hitting second, or Nathaniel Lowe is hitting second, or just everyone is shifted up one. Like just whoever they have, just shift up one. That remains to be seen if they continue to hit Josh H. Smith second. Still not a lot of interest, but
I mean, it's basically what the Astros did without Altuve in the lineup. They've shifted everybody up one and stuck a guy we're going to talk about towards the bottom of the lineup.
Another injury, we have another high-profile name, Milwaukee Brewer starter Brandon Woodruff. He is headed to the IL. He's already there, retroactive to April 8th. So it's 5 days ago. We saw Jansen Junk come up in his place, make a start, and he was terrible, as as we figured he would be. 27-year-old journeyman. But what do you make of Woodruff's IL stint? I mean,
it's interesting because he looked fine in Friday's start.
Yep, he sure did.
Right, he went like a full start. Didn't see.
Well, 84 pitches. 84 pitches is interesting, right?
That's like a full start for him though, because the Brewers overmanaged their, they micromanage the bejesus out of their pitching staff. So, that's basically a full start for him. It's almost a full start for basically any starter at this point with the way baseball's managing their starters. But there was no signs of discomfort. His pitches looked fine. There was no drop in velocity, no control issue, right? And then he winds up on the IL with right shoulder soreness or inflammation or however you want to describe it. Now, the good news is they expect it to be kind of a minimum stay, which is good because obviously you're going to want your fantasy ace back in your rotation.
Yes.
But just be concerned that it may linger, right? And if you're in a keeper league, do you have to have this in the back of your mind for next year? Because remember, Carlos Rodon dealt with this supposedly in San Francisco last year and pitched through it and didn't have a problem, and now he's still not on the mound for the Yankees. And
he's on a mound. He's not on
Well,
the. He's not on the. He's not
okay,
in
but
the
now he's
game.
also dealing with something else in his way to
Fair.
come back. So
That's fair.
for this year, I'm not all that concerned about it. But if it does lead to him changing the way he's pitching to avoid some pain, it may bring some concern for numbers.
Nothing here for Milwaukee to like add for our fantasy teams, right? Like we're not.
No, I mean
adding
they're gonna spot start the bejesus out of things.
Yeah,
Right?
they're
Like,
gonna. It's a Band-Aid.
Jansen Junk is not going to be in the rotation. Even if he was, don't pick him up. His last name tells you what he is.
Yeah.
Sorry to be mean for the guy, but he couldn't even stick with the Angels, who need all the pitching help that they can
Yeah.
possibly get right now.
He was that Band-Aid, Matt, that like you put on and then just it's like the off-brand Band-Aid. Like it's not Band-Aid. It's whatever they're and
It's
it
the
just
great
falls
value
off.
brand.
Like it's the great value brand of Band-Aid just falls off immediately.
Exactly.
Yes. Another pretty high profile name here. Someone who actually has dealt with a lot of injuries in the past few years, and that's outspoken Tim Anderson, and in not a bad way either. Outspoken in I think a very refreshing way to Major League Baseball. He is now down for what seemingly is going to be 2 weeks with a knee sprain. But again, generally we don't think much of knee sprains as like long-term impact, but Tim Anderson played 79 games last year. He only played 123 games the year before. We had COVID in 2020, 2019, 120 games. He is not exactly playing 150 games a year.
Correct.
Is this a little more concerning to you considering his injury prone style of baseball?
I mean, it is because it fits the pattern.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go so far as to call him Byron Buxton, who's like never played 100 games in a season, right?
Right.
But it is a thing we got to be worried about with the White Sox here, right? We're talking about the core. We're talking about like Eloy has been on the shelf. He's going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks. You got Tim Anderson on the shelf. Yoel Moncada's injured, but not playing, but not on the IL, right? And so who knows? Like they seemingly can't stay healthy with this core that they've built around that was supposed to take them places that hasn't. So I am a bit concerned that there is another stint coming, just given the pattern that he's shown. But when he's on the field, you got to play him. I mean, he helps in every category. So it's one of those things where you got to bite the bullet and play him, but you just got to, have a little bit of a cushion for when he does happen to go down.
Yeah, and there's nothing to add there for Anderson or the White Sox. I fully agree. And again, you mentioned it when we were talking about Corey Seager. It's a stale position. Like there's, you're biting the bullet. You're mixing and matching your shortstops on the waiver wire if you don't have another shortstop eligible player on your roster, and then you can't wait until Tim Anderson returns. So you're kind of just dealing with it there. Someone is dealing with multiple injuries right now is Carlos Rodon. The left-hander was supposed to throw live BP. He is dealing with back tightness. Manager Aaron Boone did say that it was only going to be pushed back a day. So he is expected to throw his bullpen on Thursday. And then if that goes well, throw 2 live batters on Friday. There is no official announcement on when a rehab assignment would be. If both of those things prior go well, I guess let me ask you, I'll ask it both ways, okay? Let's say both scenarios, he throws on Thursday, it goes well. He throws live on Friday, it goes well. What's your expectation for a rehab assignment? If it doesn't go well and the back or the arm or both are barking, is this leading us down a dark, dark path of maybe not seeing Carlos Rodon at all this year?
Well, I think we got a few steps before we get to
Right.
that point. Paraphrase a West Wing comment. Nuclear meltdowns when 12 things go wrong. I've only seen 6, right? So like we're not there's several steps to go before we go to
Before the nuke. Before the nuke. Yeah.
right before Rodon not pitching at all. Now, granted, those of you who hate the Yankees probably want to see that happen, but
Right. They want to see anyone who hates the Yankees wants to see the world burn.
correct. So here's the thing. If they go well, I think he starts a rehab assignment probably within a week. And they're gonna slow roll it, right? It's gonna be a reasonably long rehab assignment because remember, he got basically no innings in spring training. Like none. So he's starting from ground zero. I know, bad turn of phrase when speaking about New York, but he's starting from zero in terms of innings. And you want him to be the number 2. So you got to get him up to at least 6 innings, if not more, to go save that now withering bullpen too. So if it's good, I think he's on track for what was it? Late May is when they basically expected him back. I think if either one don't go at any point, like if they're not good, you got to start adding a week or more onto, worst case scenario is they don't go well. And then they say, well, we're shutting him down for another 2 weeks. And then we have to restart the whole process that it took them this long to get to. Right. So we'll see. Look, we can wish that it goes well, hope it goes well. I don't want to root for dudes to be injured, obviously. But we'll see. I think we're still looking at May if everything goes well, like late May.
Oh, the Yankees just need him to pitch 2 innings at this point. The Yankees need anybody an able body. They need able bodies on the mound right now.
They're
so
this close to having like an open tryout from the stands.
Actually,
anybody who any of the bleacher creatures who throws the ball back and reaches second base probably gets a contract at this point.
Who is the next Vince Papale? Find out. Find out next week. Yeah. So hopefully we get more word on Thursday and Friday about Carlos Rodon's status on the mound and how he comes out of everything. Someone who is currently actively taking BP and could even be switching positions, and that all seems to be the most likely scenario, is Bryce Harper, first baseman. Yes, that is right. Bryce Harper taking live BP and is preparing to return as the Philadelphia Phillies first baseman, which honestly makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
The Phillies have now lost 2 first basemen this year. Rhys Hoskins for the year, Derek Hall, the kind of breakout at times last year. He is out for an extended period of time. So Harper's going to return. He was originally anticipated his return as just the DH, but because of the need, get Alec Boehm back to his natural position at third. What do we make of Bryce Harper returning as a first baseman? Matt, this could open up a monster door in fantasy if Bryce Harper, because Bryce Harper has outfield eligibility.
Correct.
Bryce Harper's not losing that outfield eligibility anytime soon.
Nope.
But he's going to gain first base eligibility. Bryce Harper could end up being, if he's obviously on the waiver wire, which if you have short benches, could be possible, right? If you're in a criminal league that Bryce Harper, there's no IL spots or you have short benches, like Bryce Harper's probably available. But if you drafted Bryce Harper, the value of that draft pick could be so sweet come anytime soon,
Yes.
What do you make of Bryce Harper and his return and becoming a first baseman?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like, here's the concern when he comes back. He's not going to be able to really throw it for a while, right? That's why he was DHing in the second half of last year, because he could swing a bat, couldn't throw. That's basically still the case when he comes back from Tommy John, is they need a ramp-up period where he's just swinging and not throwing. What do you not have to do, generally speaking, at first base? You don't really have to throw that often. I mean, yes, if you're throwing to home or if you start a double play, sure. But you're talking about throwing in a max of 90 feet. Right? In the outfield, that guy's trying to cannon people out from the right field corner all the way to third base. That's like a 300-foot throw.
Right?
So there's a huge difference between throwing as hard as you can for 300 feet versus throwing just fast enough to get a guy running at not top speed for 90 feet, right? So it gets his bat in the lineup. The other thing it does is it doesn't clog up the DH spot, because if you put him at DH, then you're forcing somebody else to go have to play the field who may not be a guy you want in the field all the time, right? Because they have a guy named Nick Castellanos who's not exactly the best defensive right fielder.
No.
Um, so I think it makes a lot of sense. And does it change his timeline to get on the field? No, I don't think so. He took, live batting practice at Citizens Bank Park like 4 or 5 days ago at this point.
Right.
So he should be starting a rehab assignment relatively soon. I don't think the timeline changes much. If anything, it might improve at this point. So yeah, now going into next year, if he does not play outfield this year, going into next year, he would only qualify at first base if they keep playing him there, right?
Right.
So this year he would be outfield first base. Going into next year, you would almost assume that he would lose the outfield because he hasn't played. But that still makes him a huge value because first base is very weak.
Matt, we have an update live on Jeffrey Springs.
Okay.
So they are reporting per Trisha Whitaker of Bally Sports, Florida.
Who is the sideline reporter for the Rays broadcasts?
Yes. So she is reporting that he left today's game with a left arm ulnar neuritis. And
so Will Middlebrooks was correct.
So if for all those, I just Googled what is ulnar neuritis just to have the exactly correct. It is inflammation of the ulnar nerve in the arm that results in numbness or weakness in the hand.
Okay, so
it's
Will Middlebrooks,
the funny bone, essentially.
Yes. Basically, so he probably had trouble gripping the ball.
Yep.
It's like if your hand is asleep and then you try to
Sure.
grip something, right? Except this is a Major League Baseball pitcher trying to throw a ball 98 miles an hour and control it so he doesn't hit people in the face like some other dudes have done to, like, I don't know, Kyle Farmer. So props to Will Middlebrooks, who is the NESN analyst who tweeted out, said could be ulnar nerve, looked like he was tingling, couldn't grip stuff. So if that's the case, you just got to let it go away, unless it's a pinched nerve, and then they're going to do a procedure to unpinch it. But this is probably one of the best case scenarios. He may wind up on the IL just to let it pass. But if it passes on its own, he could be out there next start. We'll have to wait and see, but there's almost zero reason to think that he's going to miss more than maybe a couple of starts.
Yeah, this was definitely a great sign. Yeah, so we'll find out more about what his future looks like. But it looks like everything is going to be a-okay with Jeffrey Springs after that scare. Let's dive into a different topic here, Matt. Let's go into some waiver wire talk. Let's go into some ad drops here for the week. The rest of the week, if you play in daily pickups, daily ad drops for next week, if you're in weekly leagues. Let's talk about some ads and whether you believe they're ads or worth being added. Okay. We'll group a couple of these guys together. I'll start in the outfield, and we'll go with Jonathan Daza of the Colorado Rockies, Trace Thompson of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Leody Taveras of the Texas Rangers. How would you rank those three outfielders in terms of priority? And like, give me your like barometer, because like all three are viable, but like give me your barometer on like what formats you would add them in, because I think like for me, Daza would probably be a much deeper pickup, especially with the add of Nolan Jones, who can play infield, outfield, and could potentially take at bats from Daza, especially as this team gets a little healthier. Give me your like breakdown of those three outfielders in terms of priority and what kind of formats you'd be looking at.
Yeah, so if you need a little bit of everything, I would go Leody Taveras. When healthy, I think coming into the year, most folks saw him as a 15-20, maybe a 20-20 guy coming in. He did not get out to the best start, I will be honest with you. In the first game back, he struck out 3 times, which is not great. But he should be the starting full-time center fielder for the Rangers, who, yes, just lost a big bat in Corey Seager. Unfortunate, but there's still enough offense around him to, he doesn't have to push it. So if you need a little bit of everything, I would go Leody Taveras. If you want a guy who has some decent pop, may not steal all that many bags, should make decent contact, Trace Thompson. Look, he's off to a great start. He's hitting like 317 with 4 homers and 11 RBI so far. There's really zero reason why Dave Roberts is going to take him out of the lineup. He's playing a very good center field for them. I know that they like to mix and match in their lineups, but to be honest, Trace Thompson is the guy that doesn't seem to be being mixed and matched for. As good as James Outman has been, Trace Thompson has still been in the lineup just as much. And then Daza for me is a deep league. Like if you need help, you need a starting outfielder who's available and in a deep league. Daza's perfectly fine. Look, he plays in Coors for his home games. He's been hitting very nicely. He's in the 290s for batting average. The offense is going to be streaky. There's no doubt about it. He's not hitting as high in the lineups as some of the other guys, and that's how I break those down.
I agree. I am not as bullish, I think, on Daza as you. I'm a little
There's
different
more question marks
because
about him, but right now I think he's worth at least a streaming ad. I mean,
sure,
he's playing and he's doing well.
sure, I can get behind that. Let's focus on some infielders. Nolan Gorman of the St. Louis Cardinals has looked very sharp. Granted, just played a series in Coors Field to aid those stats, but nonetheless has been consistent in the lineup. And Mauricio Dubon of the Houston Astros has filled in quite nicely with Jose Altuve out. What's your barometer on those two? Gorman is they're both kind of interesting, right? Because we know at some point Jose Altuve is going to return.
Correct.
What does that do to Dubon? We know that Lars Nootbaar is on his
he's starting a rehab assignment. Yes,
his rehab assignment. The Cardinals already have 27 different position players that like you can make a case for playing 150 games, and they don't all do it. Like Brendan Donovan has been in the lineup, but we've seen him sit. We've seen Tyler O'Neill get into altercation with his coach, and we've seen him sit. Alec Burleson is hitting second for them right now against right-handed pitchers. Nolan Gorman can play 3 different positions. Like, what is your take on both these guys? Because, like, as of right now, there's plenty of playing time, but, like, long term, could you see a scenario where they're just ads for the immediate? Or let me phrase it like this. Who has better long-term value and who is the better immediate pickup? And they both could be this, and that could be the same guy if you believe that they're the same guy.
I think it might be the same guy. I think it might be Nolan Gorman for the same.
I agree.
For the same one. Nolan Gorman has multi-position eligibility. Dubon is second base, right? Now, is he playing a very good second base? Sure, but let's say you lost Corey Seager. Dubon, unless you can move the guy from middle infield to short, Dubon doesn't really help you with that. Nolan Gorman can fill in a bunch of different spots.
So on ESPN,
yes,
he is only second base eligible.
For Nolan Gorman?
That is ESPN specific. Yep. For ESPN specific leagues.
Okay. Fair enough.
He is only second base. Now, that could definitely change, obviously. He's going to probably fill in a bunch of different spots.
Yeah. But I do think going forward, when Jose Altuve is back, Dubon's not getting
correct.
He's going to be on spot duty, right? Anytime Altuve needs a day off, put in Dubon. But that might be like getting the backup catcher for any normal team, not named the Braves. Right. Gorman can play a few different spots. He can play in the outfield, which, yes, is a cluster of massive proportions in St. Louis at the moment. But he can also play middle infield in case Brendan Donovan ever cools off or they move Donovan to another place and you can put Gorman at second. So, like, there's a few different spots. Plus, I think they need the power threat in that lineup that Gorman has to help them. Yes, they have decent pop, but like an instant game tying bat outside of Goldschmidt and Arenado, I think it's a little tougher to find.
Agreed. I also would go Nolan Gorman on both those questions. But Dubon, if Gorman, who is 27% owned in ESPN leagues, is not available, and he most likely won't in a lot of sharp leagues. I mean, that's again just ESPN. A lot of those are, very friendly. A lot of those are like gonna check half the time and not ever make roster moves. Like how that's just Mauricio Dubon is a perfectly good alternative for the time being, and
right, because we also don't have a verified time frame for Altuve returning. Right. Like, he was back hugging his teammates a couple days ago, but they also didn't state when he was going out on a rehab assignment. They didn't state that he was taking live BP. They didn't even state that he was swinging against a ball on a tee.
Right.
They just said, yeah, he could move his thumb. Okay, congrats. He's back to the human condition. But, like, that doesn't give us a timeline. So it's not saying Altuve is imminent. It's just saying that at some point Altuve is coming back and Dubon has a hard stop for playing time at that point.
Sure. And right now, Dubon, just for context, he has never been this good at the plate, and it's going to be hard pressed to like imagine him staying this hot.
If he was, the two prior teams that had him would not have let him go.
This is true. But where I was getting at is the expected numbers, Matt. 361 average, expected batting average, 360. 444 slug, expected slug, 450.
So he's hitting it where they're not, is what you're saying.
I mean, yes, he has definitely fared well. His BABIP is 371. That is obviously there is regression coming, but maybe Mauricio Dubon is the biggest shift fan of all time.
Corey Seager, I don't know.
Yeah, man, you're probably not Corey Seager. Let's head on over to a different portion of this ad drop section, and that is the drop. And whether we are going to be dropping these guys or not. And before we started this, Matt and I started to talk about a specific player, probably the most debated player in fantasy baseball right now. And most people are going to be on Matt's side on this. And that is with dropping Chris Sale if you are in a position of rostership with Chris Sale. I am taking the other side on this, Matt. So why don't you start, and then I'll follow up with why I believe Chris Sale is someone that we should be retaining unless, like, you absolutely have no choice other than, like, dropping Chris Sale because you need to add player in favor of Corey Seager or Tim Anderson or someone that you've recently lost.
So let's start with this. Which is higher, is ERA or is K per 9? Because they're pretty close.
They are
His
very
walk
close.
Rate is twice as high as at any point in his entire major league career. And yes, it's a small sample size, but even going back to the 23 innings he pitched as a rookie for the White Sox, he still had a way smaller walks per 9 rate. And yes, I know that's a little flawed, but whatevs. He's walking like everybody. I could go up there right now and take 4 pitches from Chris Sale and be on first base. Okay. He's also, when he's not walking people, he's getting lit up. Like, the homers are just, I mean, come on. We tell people, we've literally built our entire DFS package on telling people to target starters going against the Detroit Tigers offense, right? Because they strike out. Sure. Sale struck out 7 of them. He also got lit up. He gave up a ton of runs, did not get a win. He's just, yes. Could he be rusty? Sure. But I don't have time for him to figure that rust out, because here's the other problem. His offense isn't helping him win games. That offense is god-awful right now. I'm sorry, Red Sox fans. It gives me no joy to say this. But your offense is, yes, when you had Adam Duvall out there in center field, sure. His league leading 1522 OPS or whatever it was insane. One bat does not make an offense. Y'all are playing Bobby Dahlbeck at shortstop right now. Like, come on.
That
You're
is an
not
interesting
getting
approach.
any wins from him. I just don't have the. There are enough guys out there who strike out dudes who have a better ERA and better walk rate and better shot at winning than Chris Sale. Yes. Has he been broken for 3 years? Sure. But there's always the case that he breaks again because it's Chris Sale and he's 34. And maybe, just maybe, his arm is just done because the way he throws a baseball is not natural.
Okay. I can't really refute anything you just said. So let me start off.
That's how you debate.
Let me start off by saying I can't sit here and say that you're wrong on any front because you're not. He does have an 11 ERA. He does have a 5.25 walk per nine. He has allowed 3.75 home runs per nine. All three of those numbers are
they're not good.
Atrocious. They are
not
atrocious.
Good,
they're not just it's not yeah, not great, Bob. Not great. It's worse than that. Like, but that's surface level. Those are surface numbers, right? The home runs are the home runs. That is for sure. The ERA and the BABIP are where I get I'm a little interested to see how it shakes out. So we're talking about a guy who has suffered a 406 batting average on balls in play, which maybe that number skyrockets this year just simply based on the shift being gone. And that's just kind of how things start trending for a lot of different pitchers
or Bobby Dahlbeck playing short.
Or Bobby Dahlbeck playing short, people out of position. And yes, there's a lot of factors there that like could be leading to Chris Sale's BABIP and potentially others being sky high. Then you look at the xFIP, which is fielding independent of pitching. Expected xFIP 388. Okay. Significantly lower than his 11 ERA suggests.
Yes.
You then look at the Sierra Skill Interactive ERA. That's what Sierra stands for. 394 Sierra, which is also significantly lower than his expected or his earned run average is. Not expected, then it is. The velocity is still there for Chris Sale. He's averaged 93 miles per hour in his fastball. In 19 and 21, he averaged 93.2, 93.6. So there's not been a significant drop off in velocity. Like last year, in the smallest possible sample size, his 94.5 mile per hour fastball was the second highest mark of his career since his days in his rookie year, right? So there's no real drop off in velocity for Chris Sale either. The thing that he's doing less of is throwing the slider, and he's doing less of the changeup, and he's throwing more fastballs. And we have learned through different factions of the MLB, most notably Josiah Gray lately, that sometimes the fastball is just not the answer. So if we see Chris Sale scale it back a little bit there, I can see some positive regression. I obviously like the peripheral numbers suggesting that he's been a little unlucky. And he does have a 14.25 K rate. Despite all this, he is missing bats, he is walking people, and he is giving up home runs, right? That is one of those three things.
He's the three true outcome pitcher.
He is Joey Gallo in pitcher form. That is Joey Gallo in pitcher form.
Okay, but we've been telling people for years not to draft Joey Gallo, so.
But Joey Gallo, I'm not. Again, you're not wrong. But Chris Sale, the Joey Gallo version of Chris Sale was also like Aaron Judge at one point in his career. And yes, there's been a boatload of injuries prior to that, but Chris Sale was extremely dominant for 7 consecutive years. And
so was Madison Bumgarner, and now he can't get anybody out.
But Madison Bumgarner, when he fell off, he didn't miss bats. And I know Chris Sale is allowing home runs, but he is missing a whole lot of bats. I'm just saying.
Okay, but 7 of those came against the Tigers, who everybody strikes out.
Look.
Literally a dude with 4 strikeouts this year. All 4 have come against the Tigers. Like, they don't hit.
If you are in a position that you can hold on to Chris Sale for a few more starts, while a guy who's made 14 starts since the year 2019 is figuring it out, I think that could end up being a reasonable approach. I also think Chris Sale is someone who is going to be dropped a lot, no doubt, is someone that you could take a flyer on at some point. Now, also, like, doesn't pitch in the best division, but he
No.
pitches in a division where there's a lot of teams that strike out at a pretty high clip in the American League East. The Yankees are striking out at 25% of the time. Um, Toronto strikes out relatively high. And Baltimore, has a pretty good hitting environment now that, or a pretty good pitcher's environment now that the Walls have um, gone
Right,
7.
but, like, there are dudes out on the waiver wire that strike out a bunch of guys. So if we're holding a guy for one category, I need something else. I need the
I,
ratios not to tank my. I mean, his whip is astronomical.
Yeah, I know, but like it's the ratios, but it's the expected improvements that could be coming to improve the ratios. I don't disagree. Like there's nothing suggesting that like Chris Sale's ratios are like, well, he's just been bit by a couple home runs. Like that's not happened. He's walking a lot of guys, whatever. But the expected numbers and the peripheral stats are just flat out telling us that he's been unlucky. And maybe that unluck just happens sometimes. Like he might just go through a full year, he might be washed. All these things are possible. I also think we're only 3 starts into the year. I think it is also possible that Chris Sale is just getting used to being an everyday starter again, considering he hasn't pitched in 3 years really. So, I think a good debate there. I think honestly, like you have all the leverage in this debate, truthfully, and I can't fault for anyone for dropping Chris Sale. I cannot. I currently own Chris Sale in a league, and it is pulling at my like, what do I do? Do I drop him? Do I keep him? I think it's worth seeing it through for a couple more starts. Maybe not someone we're looking to see through anymore is Nick Martinez of the San Diego Padres, who is towing the rubber on Thursday night. A lot of hype on Nick Martinez last year when he returned from the KBO after dominating the KBO. And, we've seen some good stories leave baseball and come back. Chris Flexen did the same thing. He looked terrible in professional baseball, went to the KBO, did extremely well, came back, and has been a pretty solid every fifth day starter for the Seattle Mariners. Nick Martinez has not been that guy. He was much better in the bullpen last year. Matt, let me guess. Let me just ask you flat out. It's only a matter of time before we see Nick Martinez back in the bullpen, right?
Yeah, I think he's only there because they have to have a fifth starter, right?
Yep.
They don't have anybody else. Who would you rather drop from San Diego, Blake Snell or Nick Martinez?
Oh, we're just Blake Snell has the Cy Young to hang his hat on.
But here's the thing: if Nick Martinez goes back to the bullpen and the numbers improve,
yeah. Look, I'm keeping. You're not wrong. I'm not saying Blake Snell has been good.
But Nick Martinez right now is, if you can drop him, you need to. I'm in a league with him, and it's a league where I can't make moves, so I am stuck riding that unfortunate roller coaster. But yeah, like if you're swapping, here's an idea: somebody drops Chris Sale, go pick him up for Nick Martinez. I'd be fine with that. I know I just told you to drop him, but at least, like James said, at least there's signs of life. Like if you're desperate and you're like in a 10-teamer, then you can drop Chris Sale. I don't think anybody's going to go pick that guy up right now. But like in deeper formats, I would make them. You're dropping Nick Martinez and go and find somebody else.
I actually think you could look to someone on his team, and that is Seth Lugo, who has started the year off pretty well. And they're kind of running a 6-man rotation. Ryan Weathers, who knows who knows
Losing
what
Roberto Perez for the year is going to hurt them, though.
right. And who knows whether or not he's going to stay in the rotation, but oh, come on, no reaction?
I mean,
who knows whether or not he's going to
it was
okay.
good.
Anyways,
Your dad jokes need some work, though, Grande.
They do. Seth Lugo has never necessarily been a starter.
Yeah, not really. He was a
Since
trainer for the
his
Mets.
since his like second year in baseball, which was 2017. But 13 innings so far, 138 ERA. Like, yes, his expected ERA is 2 runs higher, but if you were to tell me Seth Lugo had a 3.6 ERA with almost a strikeout per inning, with 2 wins and like the Padres offense backing him, I could see myself. I would rather have Seth Lugo than Nick Martinez at this point.
Yeah, probably. I would take that.
Let's talk about a pair of let's wrap it up here with a Mets discussion, because there is a loud conversation going on right now with the Mets situation, and it is really just with the roster in general and who's on it and who's not. And it's mostly revolving around the bottom of the order, because after you get behind Jeff McNeil, there's nothing reliable for the Mets, unless Tommy Pham's in the lineup against lefties. Mark Canha, he's not doing it anymore. Eduardo Escobar fell off a cliff when he ended up on the Mets last year.
What Eduardo Escobar's WRC plus is right now?
I can only imagine. I
100 is league average. Eduardo Escobar's WRC plus right now is 1.
Okay, so you and I are only
1.
We are only trailing Eduardo Escobar by 1. So let's get in a couple plate appearances and see what we can do, Matt.
That's probably only because he has a home run. If he didn't have that, it might be negative.
So the discussion is what the Mets have in AAA. If you are an owner, a rosterer of the likes of Mark Canha, Eduardo Escobar, or if you are playing in a deeper format, because these guys are not available in Dynasty, if you are just floating around with a 10-man bench, 30-man roster, however it shakes out, would you drop the likes of Escobar and Canha? And would you pick up the likes of Brett Baty and Mark Vientos? Or Ronnie Mauricio? Or whoever the Mets are going to call up in the next, I don't know, few days, mainly Baty and Vientos?
So I would be all over Baty. The guy is crushing it, even though he missed a few days in AAA with a thumb issue. He came back. He's hitting like 333 cents, crushing baseballs. I wrote about 2 of these guys in the prospect report this week as a pair of call-ups that could be made. I don't know where they're going to find room on the 26-man roster. I'm sure there's some injury that could be, baked to bring them up. But Baty, people wanted him to break camp with the team, and there was really no reason why he shouldn't have. And then he's done nothing to dissuade that argument at AAA. So he could come up and easily take third base. Here's where things get interesting. You want a 2-for-1? Call up Baty and Mauricio. Why? Because Mauricio, who's at shortstop, you're not going to play him at shortstop. He's not overtaking Francisco Lindor.
No shot.
You're not going to play him at second base because he's not taking over Jeff McNeil, who you just extended.
Right.
So here's the thing. Mauricio's like 6'3". That's a little too tall to be a shortstop on an everyday basis. Yes, I know we saw Cal do it. I know we saw Jeter do it, but what was their big problems? Defense, right? Yep. Can't be playing everyday shortstop defense at 6'3". Here's the thing. He's got a cannon for an arm, like 65 grade arm. So move him to third base where the arm plays. He doesn't have a great hit tool, but he's got enough to make contact, and when he does, he hits it a fairly long way. So that profiles his third base too. So move him there. Put Baty in left field, take Canha out of the lineup. You got 2 young guys to help out the bottom of that order, along with Francisco Alvarez, whenever the hell you want to play him over Thomas Nido. And then you get Escobar and Canha out of the lineup.
That feels like a pretty good solution, and one
and
that a lot of Mets
could be trade bait to go help you with your pitching staff.
Right. Who apparently is just going to fall apart right before the season starts and hurt all my fantasy teams. Anyways, Matt, let's finish this one off with a little streamer talk as we head into the weekend. Who is, you and I nailed it last weekend. Colby, not so much. We don't want to tell it. We won't say not so much. Didn't nail it
He picked
though.
on his own team, and his own team
Picked
showed
on
up.
his own team and his team. Yes. You know what? Smart on Colby. You know why? Because he couldn't lose in that scenario.
Right, because either you win with your streamer pick, or your team wins.
Colby is 20 steps ahead of us, huh?
He's playing chess, man.
We are playing checkers and Colby's playing chess. No wonder he has so many vacations. Dude is just smart, thinks ahead of the whole world. Matt, who is your top streamer heading into this weekend of action?
Yeah, so on Sunday we get the third game in the White Sox O's series. I'm going to take the O's starter, Grayson Rodriguez. Yes, he got a little bit hit against the Rangers. Okay, sure. But if you actually watch that game, it was not badly pitched. He pitched pretty well. He just got beat on some, frankly, bad pitches by a good offense. Not to mention, not only was he sweating making his MLB debut near his hometown, he was also doing it against Jacob deGrom, which trying to go pitch for pitch with deGrom is, hell, there are Cy Young starters that can't do that.
Right.
The White Sox, we just talked about how messed up their lineup is, right? No Eloy, Yohan Moncada may or may not play. Tim Anderson's not there. It's not as if Elvis Andrus has been doing all that much at second base, right? So I'm going to take Grayson Rodriguez going against a banged up, beat up White Sox offense that's been struggling and who can be struck out. So I'm going to go with Gray Rod.
I love it right now. I love him right now. Get his innings. Use him now while you can, because
right, he's almost assuredly on an innings limit.
No question.
Almost assuredly.
Yeah, no question. No official announcement, but like
the man pitched 90-something innings last year.
Yeah,
he's not going above 130.
No, he's
no way.
And 130 might be.
Yeah, it might be more like 120. I don't know. Colby and I talked about it on an earlier season pod.
I'm gonna go with a veteran of sorts, one guy who we didn't really see much of last year due to injury, but he had a very good 2021 season. As my curtains hit me in the arm, I'm now dealing with an ulnar injury after my curtains hit me in the left elbow. But Anthony DeSclafani has started off his 2023 campaign very sharp. 0.73 ERA in 2 starts, xFIP of 282, so he's looked really good. 52% ground ball rate, everything suggesting that ain't nothing leaving this ballpark when Anthony DeSclafani's on the mound. No home runs through 2 starts. And he gets the Detroit Tigers here, Matt, who rank, as you mentioned, I mean, your whole Chris Sale segment was spent crapping on the Tigers. It wasn't actually crapping on Chris Sale. It was just, it was more shots at the Tigers. It was more a shot at the Tigers. They are the only team in Major League Baseball right now with a sub 600 team OPS. It is 560. It's not even that close.
Nope.
We are closer to rounding down to 500 than we are rounding up to 600. They also have a 27.1% team K rate, second highest in the league. DeSclafani not known for his strikeouts all that much, but it could be in line for some. There could be some serious strikeout equity here, Matt. Before we get out of here, any final thoughts for the fine people at Fantasy Alarm?
No, I mean, we'll be back with another edition of the MLB podcast on Monday. I had pretty good luck with my streamer last week. Hopefully I have good luck with my streamer this week. You can also catch my NASCAR stuff this weekend too. They're at Martinsville. Chase Elliott's back. So have fun with that one.
Yeah. Matt is the 1, 2, 3-time NASCAR Rider of the Year, in case you guys didn't know that. 3-time. I know, what did Booker T used to say? Booker T said 5-time. 5-time. 5 for all those old wrestling fans. Matt is soon to be 5-time. I mean, that's only inevitable. But also, for all those that are listening for the first time or have been longtime listeners, please subscribe. Please support us in any way you can. Hit the thumbs up button on the YouTube video below. It goes a long way to ranking us higher in the algorithm. Shout out to everyone that supports us daily with the subscriptions, with the likes every time we post this podcast, and whatever platform you do intake our podcast and this podcast specifically, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and even turn on your notifications too. You could, every time we post this podcast, it goes live, and all that good stuff. Matt, big shout out to you. You and Colby will be back for Monday's episode. I'm just the Thursday guy. Like, they just call me up from the bullpen. I have only a couple options left before I can be sent back, before they have to keep me.
He's like the Taj Bradley. He shows up, does well, then we send him back to the minors and call him back 5 days later.
Yep. But don't forget, we only have so many options with me. So, like, we can't, I only got a couple more send downs left. But big shout out to you. Big shout out to the family. Big shout out to Colby. And Matt and Colby will be back on Monday for the podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week.